This just went just how I hoped it would go. Now we're talking about what are called the Four Noble Truths, which is suffering, acknowledging the cause of suffering, which is craving, the potential for releasing the mind from craving, and then the path towards liberation. So we're going to do that in 15 minutes, so saddle up, y'all. Yeah, so just find any way to sit that feels comfortable for you. And if it feels good, you can close your eyes, or you just rest your gaze at the floor in front of you. And starting with some longer, slower, deeper breaths, just to help the mind start to settle into the body and to slow down. Starting to become the breath. And as you're ready, letting go of any control over the breathing and just allowing the body to breathe all on its own. Trusting in the wisdom of the body. And letting the mind settle into that rhythm, same way that our bodies settle into the seat. And setting intention that for this next 15 minutes, there's nowhere to go, there's no one you have to be. So you can set down the pressures of performing or having to be anyone. And just allowing yourself to sit here and breathe. So allowing the thinking mind to fall to the background, and the body and the breath to come to the foreground. Softening the face and the eyes, the jaw. Staying with the breath and relaxing the shoulder blades and the arms and the hands. Still staying with the breath and softening the stomach and the belly and the muscles of the chest, which can allow the body to breathe a little easier. And then scanning down into the legs, feeling the weight of the body, softening through the upper legs, down through the knees and the lower legs, all the way through the feet. And then settling into the body and the breath in a way that feels comfortable for you. Maybe there's a location, just trusting your own intuition and what feels supportive right now. And as we settle into this body and this breath and this mind, just starting to know what's here right now. This quality of non-judgment, whether it's ease or tension or a busy mind or a calm mind. Just recognizing experience. And noticing if there's any stress present, any unease, just gently acknowledging it. with this kind of embracing quality of mindfulness. Just not fixing it, not pushing it away, just allowing it to be known. Keeping the practice simple. Every time the mind wanders off, just returning to that supportive rhythm of the breath. Noticing if there's any feeling tone in the body. Anything pleasant, anything unpleasant. And also noticing if the mind is craving anything or trying to push anything away. Sometimes it can be as subtle as not wanting thoughts to be there, or wanting calm to be there. With mindfulness, we're not so concerned about the content, but it's just about the process. Noticing this kind of subtle pushing and pulling that can happen in the background of the mind or the foreground. That can cause stress. And then also recognizing this capacity of the mind to release. To recognize these little moments of holding on or pushing away, breathing through it, and coming home. Coming home to this awareness that is innately open and free. Every time the mind returns and lets go, it's familiarizing the mind with the practice of release, freedom. To not be bound to anything at all. What does it feel like to rest with this heart and mind exactly as it is? With no pushing and no pulling. What happens when we release the mind from craving or thirst? So we'll spend the remainder of this meditation in silence for a few more minutes, just practicing this very simple, but not easy, practice of release and returning. So, we are going to conclude our 3-month journey through mindfulness today. And so the final talk is on the Four Noble Truths. True form. And so rather than relating to them as like these noble truths or philosophy, the way I want to explore it is a practice, things to practice. I think it's a lot more approachable and yeah. So this is kind of a natural place to land as we're finishing this series too, on all the four foundations, because what we've been practicing, mindfulness of the body, the feeling tone, the mind, of all these patterns of mind, this is exactly where these four truths come to life. The suffering, noticing, acknowledging suffering, recognizing the cause or this core of grasping or thirst, recognizing the capacity for the mind to release from that, and then to make a path out of the practice, weave it into daily life. And I also, today, I'm going to be introducing a few lines from the early bhikkhunis. There's a book of poems from ordained women from the time of the Buddha that have made it 2,500 years. And they're really beautiful. They're like poetry of release, and you get little clips and insight into these women's lives 2,500 years ago, and the joy that they found in setting down their household lives to practice with the Buddha and to be ordained. So the first truth, or I guess task we could say, is to understand suffering, which I know can feel like a dark or a heavy way to begin a practice. So this is your fun first assignment, understanding your suffering. And rather than taking it as a belief or something to adopt, it's like an invitation to acknowledge there is pain in this life, there is challenge, whether we observe it or not. And this path really encourages actually an exploration of where that pain arises. And there's the inevitable, pain of this life, of aging, of sickness, of loss. But the Buddha taught that suffering is not mandatory, that it's optional, that aging, sickness, and loss in and of themselves don't imply suffering. It can be painful, it can be uncomfortable, but the suffering is this added layer that the Buddha taught we can be free from. Shows up as resistance, clinging, wanting things to be different than they are, pushing things away, and that this layer of suffering is participatory, that it's actually engaged and the mind practices it whether it knows it or not. And so this is where mindfulness comes in. It allows us to begin to become familiar with the particular ways suffering shows up in our own experience. And to ask, what does stress feel like in the body? What does the mind do when it experiences something unpleasant? And how am I relating to this moment? And so this is exactly what we've been practicing in all 4 of these foundations, coming back to the body, feeling tone, the mind, patterns of mind, just really exploring direct experience. And so in a lot of ways, this first task is really essential, because if there's not much suffering, there's not much motivation for practice. I don't know about all of you here, but I know for myself, I wasn't really interested when I was just living a carefree party lifestyle. Everything was okay enough. It wasn't until I really hit a patch of suffering that I was like, okay, I need to take a look at what's going on, because this sucks. This is hard. There's a kind of classic Buddhist cliche, but no mud, no lotus. And so if there's no difficulty, there's no stress, why look more deeply? And it doesn't mean it has to be the worst stress or the worst pain, but that suffering can be like a gateway to practice, actually. Every moment that the mind is resisting or pushing away or grasping, it's an opportunity to practice and to free it. So the second task flows from the first. So as we begin to understand suffering, the question becomes, what's causing this? What is continually causing the suffering in my life? Many of you probably know this, but this is like the Buddha's life mission to figure this out. It was his doctorate of his life. Set everything down, set down his entire life, because he saw aging and he saw sickness. Parents were trying to give him a sheltered life, but there's no sheltering from these things. So he went out on this, legendary quest to try to figure out, where is this suffering coming from? And in his days under the Bodhi tree of coming to this beautiful realization, he saw that the suffering, it comes from what he called tanha, which is the thirst, a craving. And he saw that suffering, it has a traceable cause. It doesn't have to be an inevitable part of life. And one of the key things that he noticed is that it revolves around this feeling tone of experience. If there was no feeling tone, what would the mind be reacting to? If there was nothing pleasant or nothing unpleasant, what would there be to grasp at? So he saw that this was kind of the key where everything arises from, or where the chain begins. When there's something pleasant, the mind naturally wants more. It's understandable. When it's unpleasant, I want it to go away. When I'm watching a basketball game, I love when we hit 3-pointers. When we lose the ball, I don't like that. So if you want to look for craving, look right at the feeling tone. And if we can be mindful at that level, it's where we can begin to interrupt that cycle. And this teaching isn't saying that all desire is bad. It's just pointing at the way that the mind tries to help, but ends up creating suffering. So we've, in this group, talked about kind of internal family systems and these parts of us that we develop, these kind of manager or protector parts. They're not bad. They're trying to help, but they take on tasks that never complete. You can never completely manage a world that is constantly shifting and changing. Try. Damn well can try. They try to fix, they try to manage, they try to control, and they keep going and going and going. And the hallmark of these kind of parts being active in the mind is exhaustion. Ajahn Chah, one of the great Thai forest masters, taught that whenever there's rumination or you feel the mind spinning about something, it's likely that there's some form of craving or this thirst involved. It's not to place blame or say you're a bad person. It's just something is active in the mind. So one of the bhikkhunis I was referring to, Anattara Bhikkhuni, the words we have recorded from her are, "Long I wandered on, seeking what I could not find, chasing after pleasure again and again, never satisfied." 2,500 years ago, doing the same thing. So relatable. And so this is where the second task becomes very real. It's not just that craving exists. It's to understand, what does craving actually look like in my own mind? How is it showing up for me? I know for myself, one of the main ways that has shown up is that I have to be someone other than what I am right now. This deeply ingrained lack of self-worth or confidence, and this belief and attachment to an idea of a future version of myself that will be better and will have all the shit figured out. That I need to be more skilled, I need to be different, the list just keeps going, and I just need everyone to like me. It's not too much to ask. So there's this constant movement in the background of my mind, this thirst, this trying to arrive somewhere that never quite arrives. And this is what the Buddha called samsara, cycle, suffering. So the second task is to understand this, to notice it, study it, see how it shows up in our own lives. And the third task is one of the most profound invitations in this life. To realize in this direct experience that it is possible to be free from suffering. That the mind can be free from craving, attachment, and aversion. For so much of my life, without realizing it, I had put so much energy into this, into craving this kind of future version of myself that had it more together. And what that did in hindsight, and I can still see it when it shows up now, is it creates a dissatisfaction in the moment when that craving mind is operating. It's well-intentioned. It's like, you can get good at stuff. People will love you. It's going to be great. And it's causing me to have this sense of lack at the exact same time that it's present. Not being satisfied with who I am. And so what this path begins to reveal is something pretty profound. That the freedom or the happiness I was looking for is not in becoming something else. It's actually from setting down the whole mechanism of the craving. And that was a really profound thing for me to try to grasp. You know, they use that like paradigm shift. It was a true paradigm shift that really transformed how I operated in my life. So not just an acceptance, but like a relief. And when that craving begins to settle, you can feel it in meditation. I guarantee everyone here has had moments where you feel the mind release. And how relieving that is, just to be free in that moment. I remember for myself, and I mean, something continually that I come back to, because these teachings can sound so profound and far off. But to have moments where it's like, oh, this is real, actually. This is something that's actually possible. And people have been practicing this for thousands of years. And I can touch into that in my own life. Another quote from Soma, one of the early bhikkhunis. I sat at the foot of a tree, my mind collected, seeing things as they are. Then I knew the burden was laid down. I love that word, the burden was laid down. And Subha, another one of the bhikkhunis, said, with mind well freed, I dwell at peace. No longing remains, the fire has gone out. I really love these poems. They just evoke a stilling in my mind when I read them. So through seeing the truth of change, the mind can begin to let go of an endless quest. And it's possible to see that suffering is not mandatory. You know, pain, sure. Discomfort, sure. But this layer of suffering is where the mind can find freedom from it. I don't have to accomplish great things to be free. And that the deepest happiness available comes from recognizing this capacity for openness of an awareness that's already here. It's like as that craving releases, something opens up that is very effortless. This presence of mind when the grasping is released. So the third task is to realize this, again, not as an idea, but as something to experience directly. And to begin that, to trust that it's possible, and to set the mind in that direction, which is the fourth task, the path. To cultivate a path that leads to freedom. And I really believe this is what made the Buddha such an incredible figure, was not only spiritual realization. I don't doubt that many people have realized profound spiritual truths, but he was an incredible teacher and was able to lay out a path of practice that is pretty relatable and approachable and like amazingly clear. And so the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the fourth task, truth, just revolves around ethics, meditation, and wisdom. So on the ethics part of it, it's just living daily life in a way that causes non-harm. I think nowadays we say living in alignment with core values, not perfectly, but intentionally, making it a practice to not harm. Because when we live out of alignment, the mind easily becomes agitated. And when there's care and there's integrity, the mind feels in harmony with itself. And so meditation, the second portion of the path, it's easier to settle into meditation when we're living in alignment. And it involves learning to observe, learning to return again and again, and learning to see clearly. And not just while we're seated in practice, but to build momentum and to practice throughout every day off the cushion. And then finally, wisdom. So seeing clearly what leads to suffering and what leads to freedom. And weirdly enough, it's the Four Noble Truths again, nestled in the Eightfold Path, which is nestled in the Four Noble Truths. And so to recognize that capacity for wisdom, to use these tasks as daily life practices, not some doctrine that's just like on a bookshelf somewhere. And so these three work together. Ethics supports meditation, meditation supports wisdom, and wisdom supports how we live in day-to-day life. So as we close this series on the four foundations of mindfulness, what we've really been exploring is how to live these four tasks or these four truths. Mindfulness of the body, grounding ourselves in the experience of the body, noticing how suffering arises. Second foundation, through feeling tone, noticing the pleasant, the unpleasant, the neutral, noticing where craving begins. Third foundation, studying the mind, recognizing patterns of grasping, aversion, how and when the mind is free, when it's open, when it's expansive. And through understanding all these patterns in the fourth foundation, we begin to understand how to work with all of life. Every part of the mind is workable. And mindfulness is what makes all this possible. And the invitation isn't to just believe any of this, but is always to practice and to observe and see if it's true in your life. And to wake up every day in a world that seems to be falling apart at the seams, and to still cultivate a path of freedom of heart in the face of difficulty, and to know that it's possible to have a heart and a mind that is free, which will be a benefit to not just ourselves, but to everyone. So I want to close with a quote from the Sutta Nipata. This is one of my favorite little sections. There's several students that had traveled across India to approach the Buddha with questions, and there's so many good ones, it's hard to choose what to pick, but this is from Kappa. So this young student approaches the Buddha, and they say, "There are people stuck midstream in the terror and the fear of the rush of the river of being, and death and decay overwhelm them. For their sake, sir, tell me where to find an island. Tell me where there is solid ground beyond the reach of all this pain." "Kappa," he said, "for the sake of the people stuck in the river of being, overwhelmed by death and decay, I will tell you where to find solid ground. There is an island which you cannot go beyond. It is a place of nothingness, a place of non-possession and of non-attachment. It is the total end of death and decay. And this is why I call it Nibbana, the extinguished, the cool. There are people who, in mindfulness, have realized this and are completely cooled here and now."